Something just happened in NASCAR that nobody saw coming, and it changes everything heading into Martinsville. This is not just about filling a seat. This is not a routine driver swap that gets a two-line mention on a NASCAR recap log. This is one of those situations where you pull back the curtain and suddenly realize there's a much bigger story playing out right in front of you. Two major driver changes, same weekend, same series. And both of them say a great deal about what is actually going on behind the scenes in NASCAR right now. We're talking about opportunity, pressure, and some serious question marks about what teams are thinking as they head into one of the most intense short tracks on the calendar. And trust me, one of these moves especially caught me completely off guard. So let us start with the first move, and this one involves one of the busiest guys in NASCAR right now, Ross Chastain. If you have been following this season closely, you already know Chastain has been everywhere. The guy has basically been running anything he can get his hands on in 2026. He just came off Darlington, where he pulled off a second-place finish in the Truck Series with Nice Motorsports. That is not a throwaway result. That is a legitimate, competitive run against a stacked field. And on top of that, he also made another Xfinity start, this time with JR Motorsports. He was driving the part-time number 9 Chevrolet and brought it home in 14th. Solid run. Nothing crazy, but definitely respectable considering how competitive that field. So with all that momentum going, back-to-back strong appearances, a top 2 truck finish, a clean Xfinity run with one of the most respected teams in the series. The obvious question is, why isn't Ross Chastain back in the number 9 at Martinsville? Here is the answer, and this is where things get interesting. JR Motorsports is putting Lee Pulliam in that. And the moment you hear who Lee Pulliam is, you will understand exactly why this move stopped so many people in their tracks. Pulliam is 37 years old, from Sanford, North Carolina. And on the short track racing circuit, the man is an absolute legend. We are talking a 4-time NASCAR Whelen All-American Series Division I national champion. That is not a minor achievement. That is sustained, dominant excellence at the grassroots level of the sport. He also has 3 wins on the car's late model stock car tour, which further cements his reputation as one of the most accomplished short track drivers. But here's the thing. His NASCAR National Series experience is, in modern terms, basically non-existent. Only 6 starts ever, and all of them came way back in 2014 in the K&N Pro Series E. That is more than a decade ago. Since then, Pulliam has been putting in work on the regional circuits, stacking championships, winning races, building a resume that commands respect, but entirely outside of the National Series spotlight. So when JR Motorsports, one of the most well-resourced and consistently competitive teams in the Xfinity Series, hands this man the keys to their number 9 Chevrolet at Martinsville, one of the tightest, most unforgiving short tracks on the entire schedule. That is a move you cannot ignore. This guy is a proven short track warrior, but stepping into a JR Motorsports Xfinity car at Martinsville is a completely different animal. The speed is different. The competition level is different. The pressure is different. Everything is elevated. And the gap between regional short track dominance and a National Series Xfinity start at Martinsville is not a small one. This is the kind of move that either looks like pure genius in hindsight, a team correctly identifying that short track pedigree matters most at Martinsville and taking a calculated swing on a guy who has spent his entire career mastering exactly this type of racing, where it turns into a very steep, very public learning curve. There is no middle ground at a track like Martinsville. Now, before anyone starts thinking Chastain is out of the picture entirely, he is not. Not even close. Chastain is still racing this weekend at Martinsville, just with a completely different team. He's going to be driving the number 91 Chevrolet for DGM Racing in partnership with Jesse Iwuji Motorsports. And when you zoom out and look at his 2026 Xfinity season as a whole, the pattern becomes clear. This is now his 3rd different team in just 4 Xfinity starts this season. That is a level of movement that, in almost any other context, would raise red flags. But in Chastain's case, it is starting to look more like a deliberate strategy than a sign of instinct. And it does not stop at Martinsville. Chastain already has 2 more races locked in later this year. He is scheduled to run at Watkins Glen in May and Sonoma in June, both with Jordan Anderson Racing, the same team he ran with earlier this season at Atlanta and Coda. So there's a consistency there, a relationship being built with at least one team, even while he continues to take one-off opportunities. This is not a driver scrambling for rides. This is a Cup Series regular deliberately maximizing his presence in the Xfinity Series across multiple teams, multiple tracks, and multiple opportunities. And here's the part of this story that a lot of fans are completely overlooking. The rule change that makes all of this possible. Full-time Cup drivers with more than 3 years of experience can now run up to 10 Xfinity races per season. That limit used to be capped at 5. NASCAR doubled it. And that one rule change has fundamentally altered how experienced Cup drivers can engage with the Xfinity Series. It opens doors that were previously closed. It allows guys like Chastain to spread across multiple teams throughout a season without hitting a wall. This rule change is quietly reshaping how Cup drivers use the Xfinity Series, and Chastain is one of the first to maximize. He's not just filling seats. He is building a full secondary schedule within the lower series, team by team, track by track. So do not be surprised at all if we see Chastain back in that number 9 car again later this year. This feels more like a rotation than a permanent replacement. But that does not make the Pulliam decision any less significant. JR Motorsports made a choice. They had a Cup-caliber driver available. They went a different direction. That tells you something. Now let us talk about the second story, because this one is just as wild, and it involves veteran driver J.J. Yeley. Yeley has been around forever. This is a guy who tried to make 2026 his 22nd Cup Series season and 23rd in NASCAR national competition. That is insane longevity. The kind of career that very few drivers in the history of this sport can match in terms of pure persistence and duration. He attempted the Daytona 500 with New York Racing Team, did not qualify, but then came back the very next week at Atlanta and made it happen. That is the kind of relentless drive that defines Yeley's entire career. He has never been the guy with the big sponsor and the top-tier equipment. He grinds, he finds rides, and he shows up. Since Atlanta, he has not been back in the Cup car, but he has stayed active in the Xfinity Series. He ran at COTA with Young's Motorsports, though that race took a turn when Brad Perez had a step in mid-race, and the team finished 28th. Then Yeley came back at Darlington with Hattori Racing and finished 25th. Not spectacular results, but the guy was out there, putting miles in, doing what he has always done. And here's where things get chaotic. That number 5 Ford from Hattori Racing has basically been a revolving door this season. They have already cycled through multiple drivers, Luke Fenhaus, Tyler Gonzalez, Chandler Smith. And now they are adding another name to that list for Martinsville. Yeley is out for this weekend, and replacing him is Luke Baldwin, 19 years old, making his Xfinity Series debut. Baldwin has only run 5 Truck Series races, all in 2025 with Thor Sport Racing. His best finish in those starts was 12th at Pocono, and he actually already has experience at Martinsville, where he finished 22nd in the trucks. So at least he is not going in completely blind. He has seen the track before. He knows the walls are close. He knows what Martinsville demands from a driver. But still, jumping into an Xfinity car at Martinsville, one of the toughest short tracks on the schedule for your series debut, is a serious test. 5 truck starts, a best finish of 12th, and now you're lining up in the Xfinity Series at a half-mile bull ring where contact is inevitable. Patience is tested every single lap, and mistakes get punished immediately. That is an enormous step, and just like with the first story, there is no long-term clarity here. Hattori Racing has not confirmed anything beyond this race. No full-time plan, no locked-in driver lineup. So even though Yeley is out this weekend, that door is not necessarily closed for the rest of the season. This feels like another situation where teams are experimenting, trying different drivers, seeing what sticks. When you look at both of these stories together, they tell a bigger story about where the Xfinity Series is right now. On one side, you have got experienced Cup drivers like Chastain bouncing between teams, maximizing opportunities under new rules, using the Xfinity Series as a proving ground of a revenue stream and a way to stay sharp across different equipment and different racing environments. He ran 3 teams in 4 starts. He has bookings through June. He has a relationship with Jordan Anderson Racing already developing. That is a structured, intentional approach. On the other side, you have teams giving chances to short track veterans like Pulliam and young prospects like Baldwin. Pulliam brings a resume built entirely on regional dominance, 4 national championships, wins on the Cars Tour, and a lifetime of short track experience. Baldwin brings youth, raw potential, and 5 truck starts to his name. These are completely different profiles, but they are both getting the same opportunity this weekend at the same track. It is this mix of proven talent and raw opportunity all colliding at once. And Martinsville is the perfect place for it. Short track racing at its most intense. Tempers flare. Mistakes happen. The track takes no prisoners. And sometimes, on a weekend like this, a new name makes a statement that changes the entire conversation about their future. That is what makes these decisions so significant beyond just the race result itself. Pulliam has spent over a decade proving himself at the regional level. This Martinsville start with JR Motorsports is the biggest national spotlight he has had in over 10 years. If he runs well, everything changes. If Baldwin handles the pressure of his Xfinity debut at one of the hardest tracks on the schedule and keeps the car clean and competitive, Hattori Racing takes notice. Teams take notice. These decisions do not just stay at Martins. They ripple into future races, future rides, and maybe even careers. That is why the questions heading into this weekend go well beyond who crosses the finish line first. Does Pulliam translate his short track pedigree into a competitive Xfinity showing inside the JR Motorsports program? Does Baldwin prove that his Martinsville truck experience translates and that he belongs in this series? What does Chastain's performance in the number 91 tell us about how those part-time relationships are developing? And does Yeley find his way back into the Hattori Racing lineup later in the year? Or does this weekend signal a real shift in their driver strategy? Every single one of those questions has an answer waiting to be written, and the answers will echo through the rest of the 2026 Xfinity Series season.